several years ago, we recognized that phytoremediation was a potential way of battling local ocean acidification conditions in Puget Sound, an area particularly vulnerable to coastal to OA due to both coastal upwelling and eutrophic conditions. And we were very interested in looking at ways of growing kelp that could potentially mitigate some of the impacts due to the carbonate chemistry associated with ocean acidification. Next slide. So we were interested in looking at key questions. Can kelp farms potentially create a refuge from OA conditions that also would potentially protect and provide habitat for organisms in and around them? So I want to call out the Washington Ocean Acidification Blue Ribbon Panel, which was created by Washington State Governor Chris Gregoire back in 2012. And it was a convening of the Washington Shellfish Initiative with NOAA's National Shellfish Initiative, where scientists, community leaders, industry representatives, local, tribal, and federal policymakers came together to really try to grapple with the issue of ocean acidification. And one of the significant outcomes was a decision to really consider adaptation and remediation as ways of hopefully resolving some of the issues associated with OA. And phytoremediation was viewed as a potentially important strategy. In 2017, under the leadership of Governor Jay Inslee, an addendum to the original report and with a re-emphasis on the issues and continued emphasis on resolving, to the extent we can, issues associated with OA and coastal waters. And I want to mention again that Puget Sound is particularly vulnerable due to both the coastal upwelling, so water low in oxygen and high in dissolved CO2, comes up onto the coast, of course, but also into Puget Sound in deep water. That, coupled with eutrophic conditions due to high dissolved nitrogen, and which reduces hypoxia due to algal decomposition later, are important issues. And as a result, the Puget Sound is particularly vulnerable. Next slide. So we were looking, the Puget Sound Restoration Fund was looking at ways of potentially cultivating sugar kelp. We were funded through the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation. We submitted a proposal to the Ocean Challenge years ago now, and really asking the question, can growing seaweed potentially assist in mitigating OA? And what's happened since then is we just finished our second year of intensive measurements on a kelp farm that we established in the northern part of Hood Canal. We have project partners that are world-class through the University of Washington and Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory. And I'll mention these folks a little bit later. We're measuring essentially upstream and downstream changes in carbonate chemistry. So we're looking at dissolved CO2, pH, dissolved organic carbon, inorganic nitrogen, total alkalinity, dissolved oxygen salinity, and other parameters, seawater, as it passes through a dense field of sugar kelp. And we also have a biological component where we are looking at the rate of shell dissolution in pteropods upstream and again downstream of sugar kelp. And we've combined also that work with looking at juvenile shellfish, including species of oysters in that work as well. Next slide. So I'll run through this very quickly. This slide needs no explanation to probably 99% of everyone on the webinar today. But essentially, this is the Mauna Loa time series for CO2 in North Pacific. The red line, of course, is atmospheric CO2 just going up and up, well over 400 parts per million now. The light green, of course, is the dissolved carbonate, dissolved CO2 in seawater, and the blue is the time series of decreasing pH. And this is in the open ocean, and these effects are exacerbated when, as I said again, as seawater is upwelled against western coast of the United States. Next slide. Sugar kelp. It turns out that sugar kelp is an ideal species of macroalgae that's amenable to culture and also large-scale cultivation. It's gained great popularity in the northeast part of the United States. We are the first West Coast farm to actually be establishing cultivation parameters for sugar kelp. We actually are combining sugar kelp with shellfish culture moving forward. But essentially the life cycle of kelp we are focused on in the diagram you see in front of you with the sporophyte. That's the actual growth phase where you see kelp blades. I won't go through all the parameters of developing sugar kelp but for culture, but essentially what we're trying to do is cultivate very small sporophytes on twine that are then wound onto grow lines in the water. Next slide. This is a photograph of folks moving the twine, which is very finely wound on the spools you see in front of you. The brownish color are actually the microscopic sporophytes on the twine, and they were transporting them out into the field in this photograph. Next slide. And here we are out on the farm. The photo on the left is actually showing unspooling the very fine twine onto the grow line, and this establishes the capacity for the microscopic plants to be now in place for grow out to large kelp plants. Next slide. So this is the nuts and bolts of what the oceanographic research was, how it was set up. As you see on the diagram to the left, there are the prevailing current through the kelp farm, which is the rectangle in the middle of that graphic. And then the two blue dots are two oceanographic buoys, one essentially upstream during most tidal conditions and one downstream of most tidal conditions. So what we were essentially doing was measuring, comparing carbonate chemistry variables that I described earlier as the water passes through the bed of kelp. So this is just a photograph of setting up the oceanographic buoys that have continuous sensors, as I mentioned earlier, for measuring PCO2, pH, and a host of other carbonate chemistry parameters. Next slide. And here's a view of the farm with the two buoys in place. We're looking to the north, so you're looking in the foreground is the southern buoy, and in the background is the northern buoy. As I mentioned, the prevailing current generally runs through the farm, and in the middle of the farm you can see lots of little white buoys. Those are actually holding up, in this particular photograph, 38 lines of sugar kelp that were all fairly long fronds at this point. We've just finished, as I mentioned, the second year of study. So we put kelp in the water in early winter. It grows rapidly between January and the end of May before it starts to degrade. So the operative time is winter, early spring, to be measuring the effects of growing kelp in the water column. So this project, as I mentioned, it's just concluded its second field season, and we now have a year of looking at all the data that was collected over the last 24 months. Next slide. So the field research program is led by Dan Newton, John Nickett from UW Applied Physics Lab, and Richard Seeley and Simone Lynn from NOAA PMEL, as well as significant help from Micah Horwitz with Washington Department of Natural Resources. The modeling of the effects of growing kelp are super important, and we've got Dr. Dale Kiefer and Dr. Zach Zekress from University of Southern California and SSA, respectively. And really, the data that we generate for this project is really going to be most useful in developing a seaweed model that we hopefully will be able to take into account all of the parameters, the inputs, and generate predictions for how effective kelp is in the water column for mitigating carbonate chemistry conditions based on growth rate, size of the pond, carbon reserves taken in, nitrogen reserves, et cetera. So really the output of our project will probably be most useful in terms of development of a comprehensive model. This is really the guts of what we will be doing over the next year in terms of data analysis. Next slide. So just this visual of, okay, this is may well be more or less what things look like underwater. So we do know, of course, that during daytime the potential for taking up carbon is greater. At night, of course, kelp is going to be respiring, and this will be a loss of carbon at night. But we hope that the net effect is that both carbon and nitrogen and other nutrients are taken out of the water column, and that the net effect is improvement of carbonate chemistry. And of course, the big impact as well can be provision of habitat for any number of species, including salmonids, that we're actually monitoring with acoustic tagging to see whether or not they are using the kelp farm as potential habitat as they migrate through that part of Creek Canal. Next slide. So the other big part of the project, of course, was we're a commercial farm, and we want to know, we know that sugar kelp is quite valuable, and there's really quite a variety of different products, including, I'm just learning, parrot gin that can be infused with sugar kelp. Most of the products are salad-based, but there's also even kelp hearts that were rolled out at a recent Valentine's Day, apparently. So, of course, food is the low-hanging fruit, no pun intended, but also kelp is compostable, and of course, the big elephant on the block is bioenergy with projects of great scale. So we're looking at the potential for using seaweeds for a variety of different products, but also with the main benefit, we hope, of it providing a halo effect and some phytoremediation as we move forward. Now, I personally fully recognize that the results for the halo effect will be relatively small and associated with the farm itself, but I envision kelp farms being placed in vulnerable areas of Puget Sound, for example, down the road, with great permitting challenges ahead to see that vision. But we have to move forward and figure out how we can potentially use the mitigation effect of growing seaweed to combat this real and present danger in Puget Sound. So I'll end there, and thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much, Joss, for that presentation. Any questions for Joss before we moving on to state of California? And remember, you might be on mute if you want to ask a question. Okay, great. Well, we'll include your contact information for those interested, and thank you so much. All right, Haley Carter and Jen Phillips is going to walk us through a particular new report out of California regarding understanding the role of seagrass and kelp as a management tool. So Haley and Jen, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Jesse, for hosting this. I'm a program scientist at Ocean Science Trust, and we're a nonprofit based in Oakland, California. We're also an affiliate member, as Jesse mentioned. We were created by state legislation to provide scientific information and advising to state agencies with marine and coastal jurisdiction in California. So we work across a range of topics from climate change and fisheries, water quality. We also convened the West Coast Ocean Acidification Hypoxia Science Panel back in 2013, and we continue to support the OPC on its ocean acidification work. So Jen, did you want to also introduce yourself here?
Yeah, thanks, Haley. And I am Jen Phillips. I am our climate change policy advisor at California Ocean Protection Council, and work closely with Haley Carter at the Ocean Science Trust, and effectively the California Ocean Protection Council serves as sort of the point for the state of California's engagement on the OA Alliance.
Great, thank you. So Jen and I are going to be tag teaming this presentation, and one of the working groups we'll be talking about today was convened in 2017, and their findings came out in 2018. And their role was to summarize emerging scientific finding on the ability of seagrasses and kelp to ameliorate OA. So they largely focused more on the amelioration aspect and short-term drawing down carbon through photosynthesis, and less on carbon storage. And they focus also more on the ability of natural systems to provide carbon services, and less on aquaculture aspect that Joss was talking about. So yeah, take it away, Jen. We're going to be tag teaming these.
Great. And I know we want to catch up on time a little bit, so I'm just going to give a quick sort of framing to understand the California policy landscape. So this timeline highlights a few of our science and policy milestones, really in response to what happened in Washington way back in the 2005 to 2009 range, and really following on the Washington Blue Ribbon Panel effort that was mentioned. So specifically looking at this timeline, I just want to highlight that California did convene a West Coast Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Science Panel from 2013 to 2016 to really provide science-based recommendations and actions for policymakers and agencies in California. One of those panel recommendations was to look at the local factors that can reduce ocean acidification and approaches that will remove CO2 from seawater. So following the release of the West Coast panel in early 2016, our Senate passed a bill, Senate Bill 1363, that called for the Ocean Protection Council and our sister state agency, State Coastal Conservancy, to develop an ocean acidification and hypoxia program. In response, Ocean Protection Council invested in several seagrass research and monitoring efforts, which are now currently underway. And then, as Haley mentioned, we also called for this expert working group in 2017, 2018 to summarize what we know about the ability of both kelp and seagrass to slow the rates of ocean acidification and store carbon. Haley's going to dig into the findings that were made available in January of this year, and following that report, we also had a legislative hearing to kind of provide the state of the knowledge, what we're doing in this space in response to Senate Bill 1363, and where California plans to head in the future. So jump forward to where we're at now and our engagement on the OA Alliance. We are developing an action plan on ocean acidification as stated in our commitment to the OA Alliance, and this plan's considering a suite of strategies and options for really tackling OA broadly, but we also will have a section specifically looking at how to use living systems, so including seagrasses and kelps, to slow ocean acidification and also store and sequester carbon, since that's a big part of this conversation as well. Next slide, please, Jesse. So just a little bit of framing before Haley digs into the findings from the expert working group. There's just been a lot of interest across California in really exploring whether these regional and local scale restoration and protection efforts of submerged aquatic vegetation such as seagrasses will contribute to offsetting ocean acidification locally and will contribute more broadly to California's bold climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. So we are underway in sort of seeking answers to these questions listed below that will really guide our direction over the next 3 to 5 years in our policy landscape. So I will turn it over to Haley to dig into the report.
Great, thanks, Jen. So this was definitely a collaborative effort, and thank you to all the working group members. Karina Nielsen and Jay Stakowitz both co-chaired the group. And the findings were released, as I mentioned, in January of this year. and also presented at a hearing of Assembly Member and OPC Ocean Protection Council member Mark Stone's Select Committee on Coastal Protection and Access to Natural Resources. This report is available on Ocean Science Trust's website, oceansciencetrust.org, if you want to see the full findings. Next slide. So the working group focused on 2 species of kelp and 2 species of seagrass as providing the best candidates for conferring OA amelioration benefits in California. And these species were considered because they use dissolved forms of inorganic carbon for photosynthesis, so they directly affect the carbonate system, the aquatic carbonate system. And they are also widespread and provide a range of valuable ecosystem functions. They can be locally persistent and represent the most productive and extensive SAV and estuaries and along rocky coasts in California. So the working group also recognized that there are other living systems, including salt marshes and potentially oyster reefs, that might be also worth exploring. Next slide. And Jen, take it away.
Sorry, I was on mute. So in addition to this report, we, as I mentioned at the beginning, Ocean Protection Council in 2016 funded a few eelgrass and ocean acidification monitoring efforts across the state, so stretching all the way from Humboldt Bay up north down through San Diego Bay in the south. These projects were started in 2016 and are ongoing. They're multi-year projects, and they're being led by researchers at University of California, Davis, Humboldt State University, University of California, Santa Cruz, and Orange County Coastkeeper. And it's worth noting that they're also bringing in several tribal partners, California Sea Grant, and the aquaculture industry. So these efforts, along with this expert working group led by Ocean Science Trust, really seek to chip away at some of these questions we identified earlier. And one of the projects actually looked at how and when seagrasses modify seawater chemistry in Humboldt Bay up north as compared to the nearby open ocean, and how this might promote or sort of assist in operations at the Hog Island oyster hatchery that is located right in Humboldt Bay. So just as looking at this project as an example of what we're doing, it involves surveying eelgrass several times over the project's lifetime, real-time seawater chemistry measurements using the Berkelator that was established by Dr. Burke Hales in Oregon, and a really unique collaboration between several entities to assess the interactions between oyster aquaculture and seagrass. So I think, this is kind of a test study about how seagrasses can really not just modify the seawater chemistry, but will have impacts for businesses and operations and things that the California economy really relies on. So the expert working group that Haley's been talking about draw on these projects, and they are giving us a really bigger and better picture of the characteristics that may be correlated with greater ocean acidification amelioration potential in seagrass beds, and locations specifically where management of these habitats might be most effective in slowing ocean acidification rates.
Great. So now the findings, and the working group concluded that yes, based on existing research in literature in other areas, as well as these ongoing monitoring projects specific to California, that seagrass and kelp can at times locally increase seawater pH. The magnitude depends on the direction of carbon flux in and out of these ecosystems, as represented by the schematic here. So you can see the flux in and out of the seagrass habitat. Also, modeling efforts are underway, box models, to understand chemical dynamics in Northern California eelgrass beds, and these should be available later this year, so more of a quantitative measurement of potential amelioration. So based on these emerging ongoing research projects, characteristics associated with greater OA amelioration include longer residence time, or the time it takes for water to pass through a bed. So well-flushed habitats or estuaries may be less, might not have the same drawdown of carbon or amelioration. Amelioration also is higher at times or locations with high net ecosystem productivity or higher rates of photosynthesis compared with respiration. And this often means that during summer months or seasons where there's greater light availability or when biomass is highest. So for kelp, biomass is highest in the canopy, and that's where you're likely to see larger OA amelioration. Next slide. And how big is the effect? And scientists are finding that there's a lot of variation. Sometimes it can be positive, sometimes it's negative, or sometimes you're not going to see an effect at all. This depends on the time of day, the season, as I was mentioning, and also the location. So you really need investigations in a lot of different types of habitats in a lot of different areas. So you can see this figure, pH, on our y-axis, and this is a multi-day schematic representation with day-night cycles. And so during the day, photosynthesis draws down CO2, increasing pH. And inside the bed, you see the blue line. Outside a seagrass bed is the gray line. So you're going to actually get some higher high pH values and lower low pH values inside a seagrass bed because of the photosynthesis respiration signal. But on average, if you see the dotted lines, scientists are finding that on average that you will get a higher pH value inside seagrass beds. And this is likely over an entire season. Next slide. So what does this mean for species? And the working group did find that that is a huge knowledge gap, is our understanding of translating these potentially small chemical changes into species responses. There's still not a great understanding of whether species respond to the average pH, the minimum pH, or the maximum pH. The most studies out there look mostly at mean pH. So there's also a lot of complex community and species dynamics that must be considered. So a lot of the existing research on species impacts of SAV are mixed. So most of these are actually conducted outside of California systems. Some found that juvenile oysters grew faster in eelgrass beds compared without. They found also that buoy showed no difference. And then also other studies found that clams actually grew slower and oyster survival was reduced. And so presence of SAV alters other factors beyond just pH, including predator abundance and food availability. So you must also consider these factors when assessing whether SAV can provide benefits to species that we care about. Next slide. And then lastly, the working group did want to emphasize that no matter what additional carbon services these habitats may provide, there's a range of other valuable ecosystem functions that they provide, and so that there's alternative benefits to restoring and protecting these habitats that have already been quantified and observed. They highlighted the need to control factors that contribute to habitat loss, and then better understanding the potential future habitat expansion with climate change. So whether, in summary, that this can be couched as an OA management tool, science says in California that yes, they can provide some carbon benefits. They might not be as large as originally hypothesized. And also there's inherent challenges with restoration aside from whether you're looking at carbon services. But these habitats play so many vital roles that investing in restoration and protection can help ecological systems cope with stress associated with OA and other climate stressors. So it's not going to solve OA alone, but it can be pursued as one of the tools in your toolbox. Next slide. So some of the science needs that the working group called out is just overall better habitat maps of abundance, distribution, and condition. And then also looking at a range of living systems. OPC has invested a lot in seagrass monitoring, but also kelp and other living systems like salt marshes and oyster reefs. And then a better understanding of what species are likely to benefit from these carbon services that these habitats provide. And also exploration of farming and aquaculture. So something similar to what's happening in Washington, looking at something like that in California as well. Next slide.
Great. So just to close this out, as we mentioned at the beginning, the state of California is developing its action plan right now, and we're hoping for adoption and release later this calendar year. We also hope to sort of highlight and discuss some of the strategies of the action plan at the upcoming Global Climate Action Summit, and are really aiming to be one of the early members to release an action plan, given that we were a founding member of the Alliance. So this action plan, broadly as it is right now, will consist of several strategies, 5-year goals associated with those strategies, and key actions to take, as well as sort of a process for measuring success and implementation of the action plan. In California's action plan, we're also going to specifically call out the need to consider other living systems, so kelps and seagrasses and other systems, as Haley mentioned, to really slow ocean acidification and store carbon, and see this as a way of really connecting the fields of climate adaptation and climate mitigation moving forward. So I will stop there, and thank you all for your time, and Jesse for organizing this.
Great. Thank you so much, Haley and Jen. That's a great update and wonderful to see how it sort of fits into the broader commitments around action plans. Before we move on, any specific questions now for Jen or Haley? Great. And you can find this report online. And of course, feel free to connect with them directly or me if you'd like to follow up. All right, so I think we're getting back on schedule, so thanks so much, California and earlier presenters. And I think what we'll do is take 10 minutes for Fatima and 10 minutes for Angela. And Angela, you'll just have to, beg forgiveness that we'll just go a couple minutes early or late. But Fatima, are you on the line and you can hear us okay?
Yes, Jesse, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, and take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Jesse, for organizing this. This is Fatima from Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, United Arab Emirates. I'm a biologist in the Fisheries Sustainability Department, and today we'll go through some of government initiatives in regards to mangroves, coral gardens, and ecotourism. Next slide, please. So before I begin with the outline of this presentation, I would like to take a moment to honor the soul of the founding father of UAE, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, who believed that safeguarding of the environment for prosperity should be the responsibility of every individual. And he had an abiding conviction about sustainable development, which meant by the time improving people's lives under the broader spectrum of the environment they are living in. So through this presentation, we'll go through a very brief introduction to give you an idea about UAE water's condition. Then we'll go directly to the government's initiatives in mangrove, coral gardens, and ecotourism. Next slide, please. So UAE came first in the Arab region and Asia in Ocean Health Index, and we ranked 28th out of 221 coastal countries. So we had the score of 77 points out of 100 compared to the global average of 70 points, which is wonderful. So next slide, yeah. As the president of UAE, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed, has declared the year of 20,000 to be the year of Zayed, to celebrate the 100th year anniversary to his birth. So, Minister of Climate Change has established several initiatives. One of them was the plantation of 30,000 mangrove seedlings across UAE. So, seven emirates have participated in this. We worked with the local entities to plant 7,000 mangroves till now, and the rest will be planted after the harvesting season in September 2018, before the end of the year. Next slide, please. So Coral Garden was also another initiative that started with the Year of Zayed. Deployment of underwater coral gardens in selected locations in UAE was the main idea. Under this came the establishment of the world's largest artificial reef with collaboration with Fujairah at Transfer Center in Fujairah. So Next, please. Under this also, Ministry of Climate Change and Environment is committed to deploy and install eco-friendly artificial reef balls in collaboration with the private sector. Also, another ongoing project within the ministry is the determination of the supercorals resilient to the effect of a climate change on the UAE. Next, please. So, ecotourism was the last topic we were going to talk about. The importance of ecotourism is because of the it supports transformation towards a green economy. It generates sustainable revenue, preserves the environment, ensures better overall health of the ecosystem, along with the other importances. Next, please. So, as part of UAE government endorsement of ecotourism, UAE government has put efforts to preserve the country's rich biodiversity. We have a total of 43 protected areas, 15 of which they are marine protected areas. So basically, 40.9% of UAE's area is all protected area. UAE then ranked first globally in marine protected areas. This was a headline in the Gulf News in May 7th, 2018. Some of our marine protected areas, like Bou Al Siaif, which is in Abu Dhabi, it's around 145 square kilometers. Another one is Al Zora Nature Reserve, Abu Nair Island. Also, these are only some of our marine protected areas. Next, please. Also, as a part of UAE government endorsement of ecotourism, we have worked on development of the infrastructure needed to provide visitors with enduring experiences in natural settings across UAE. This was done by ensuring easy access to protected areas and scenic landscapes, and making sure of the availability of accommodations nearby. Also, UAE government encourages recreational activities which are nature-based, like wildlife observation trips, bird watching, stargazing, and wetland exploration. Some of our areas are like Mangrove National Park in Abu Dhabi, Al Wasba Wetland Reserve in Abu Dhabi, Al Ain Oasis. Others like Al Marmoom in Dubai, which is like 10% of the Emirates area. Ras Al Khaimah Jebel Jais, also Arabian Wildlife Center in Sharjah. These are only some of our protected areas that are open to public, and they can enjoy watching and visiting anytime. So toward the end of this presentation, I would like to thank you all for listening and take your time to ask any questions. Thank you, Jesse. Next slide.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Fatima. It's wonderful to be in touch. And for folks on the line, the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment with the United Arab Emirates has been a member of the OA Alliance for probably more than a year, and have been fantastic partners, and it's wonderful to have you part of these presentations. Any questions for Fatima? Okay. And of course, if you'd like to connect, feel free to email me directly, and we can make the connection occur. Thank you again, Fatima, for staying up late or later past 5 o'clock to participate. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much to accommodate this timing. Understanding our time difference is amazing. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, and last and certainly not least, I'm really thrilled to welcome one of our OA Alliance city partners to discuss some of their work thinking about ocean acidification actions at a city level, municipal level. And so I will welcome Angela Daniluk with the City of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. Angela, feel free to take us home. And perhaps you are on mute. Oh, Angela, can you hear us okay? Oh. Unmute.
Hello?
Oh, hello. Can you hear us
Hi.
okay?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. You go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone, from the City of Vancouver. I'm here to share a story about a partnership with our sister city, Yokohama, Japan, on blue carbon and investigating opportunities for blue carbon offset projects. Next slide, please. And next slide. So my director met someone from Yokohama, a representative from Yokohama, about a year ago, and they got to discussing opportunities to leverage the city's mitigation and adaptation and ocean acidification goals with blue carbon and blue carbon offsets. And Yokohama applied to the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance to get funding to support a project that we call the Yokohama Blue Carbon Project. Yokohama, like Vancouver, we're a temperate climate zone. We have coastal fortifications to protect our communities. We're urban cities, but we also are home to eelgrass beds and salt marshes. Now, around the city of Vancouver, our eelgrass beds and salt marshes occur in salty conditions and brackish conditions. So there's when the salinity is less than 18, then that's when it gets to be brackish, and when it's around 18 or higher, then it's salty, and that's important for later. But at this slide, Yokohama has been working on blue carbon ideas and projects since 2011, and they really focus on three themes: blue carbon, blue resources, and creating a friendly seaside. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity to learn more about blue carbon from the academics and NGOs in our community, and to see if there was any way, opportunities to study, monitor, and learn from blue carbon project offsetting. Next slide. So just last week, actually, I hosted a forum that brought together a whole bunch of actors to foster relationships, to share local knowledge about blue carbon, and to create opportunities to support blue carbon research and projects. Because here, we understand our nearshore ecosystems, but there's still lots of lessons to learn in terms of carbon flux, ecosystem services, and just the general ecology of eelgrass and salt marshes. And I was interested from a local government perspective if blue carbon projects could be incorporated into city policy and projects to advance carbon accounting, conservation, influence development, and support restoration efforts. So next slide. So here are some takeaways from our forum. And again, I'm talking about brackish and salty marine systems. Here in the Pacific Northwest, in Vancouver, high salt marshes are likely the best blue carbon offset project versus eelgrass meadows. And that's because the eelgrass here have shallow root systems, and the blue carbon is really in that sediment profile. Salinity of 18 is a key. I didn't know this. West Coast salt marshes are relatively young, about 300 years old compared to the East Coast of North America, and that's because of our West Coast tectonic history. So there's always a lot of change here. We definitely need more research to understand total carbon flux, and it was really interesting to hear that from my Pacific Northwest and California colleagues. Jurisdiction, like everywhere, is complex. So when we talk about offsetting projects, who owns what and who does what are key questions. And there are many co-benefits. And I'd like to say that this project was looking at offset projects, but really I'm interested in the pathway towards blue carbon offsets. And we might not end at an offset, but the learnings or the lessons that we get from that pathway are so rich, it can really support our other goals. Next slide. And so just a little bit about why we're doing this, because it's kind of odd for a city to investigate this subject matter. We don't have a lot of jurisdiction in the nearshore, and basically that's because in 2007, in British Columbia, there was a climate action charter that the city of Vancouver and 186 other cities signed that committed us to becoming carbon neutral, to measure and report our community's greenhouse gases, and to create complete and compact and more energy efficient communities. And so, sorry, my slides just went blank there. And so there's definitely some overlaps here. There's a table that has been set for us to investigate projects like blue carbon. Next slide. And because of our carbon neutral commitment, there is a local offset project framework in British Columbia that supports the creation of non-market offsets. And so blue carbon projects could fall under this framework. Next slide. There's also a key adaptation linkage between blue carbon and our adaptation goals. We will have to manage and prepare for floods because of sea level rise and storm surge between now and 2100 and into the future. And that will really result in the alteration of our shoreline, which we need to think of new solutions for to accommodate things like coastal squeeze and nearshore ecosystems. Next slide. And here's just an example of that. This is a picture of our downtown core, and the area that's shaded out in white or outlined in white is a community area that is undergoing review. The image below of blue and yellow and green shows projected flood extent during a major storm and 1 meter of sea level rise. And so we are partnering with experts from the Netherlands to look at softer approaches that incorporate blue carbon or eelgrass, salt marsh principles into the design. Next slide. We also have a lot of biodiversity goals. We're a community that loves the shoreline. We love nature. We recreate there. We watch the sea life. That's a chub salmon in the upper left corner. We also create habitat to manage our stormwater, so in the bottom right corner at our Olympic Village. So looking at supporting the restoration and conservation of nearshore ecosystems can really help us to achieve our biodiversity goals. Next slide. In the city of Vancouver, we're also working towards reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples. This is a big goal for us. It's part of our daily business. And for the First Nation people of Vancouver, you know, the waterways, the nearshore ecosystems are their places for food, for culture, for spirituality. And so working with them to understand how they have used and monitored and supported these nearshore ecosystems will help us towards not only renewing our shoreline, but also fostering partnerships with them. Next slide. So this is my call to action from this work, is that local governments, cities, can leverage greenhouse gas reduction targets and adaptation targets to support projects like blue carbon, whether it ends up in an offset project or not. Partnerships are key, and we'll work to understand and promote these nearshore ecosystems. There are many ecosystem services that eelgrass meadows and salt marshes provide, and we can really look to achieve reconciliation through restoration, conservation, and carbon accounting associated with blue carbon projects. Next slide. And that's it. this is any questions, or if you want to contact me later about the Blue Carbon project, please do so.
Thank you so much, Angela. That was fantastic. Any questions for Angela? All right. And again, feel free to reach out and we can connect you directly. And I just want to, sorry? No. I just want to say thank you so much for our presenters this morning. It's truly delightful to see this work start to grow in its diversity and diverse regional approaches coming together to share what you're doing. And it's just really, really wonderful to start the morning with these 4 presentations. So with that, I will say thank you so much for participating. This is all a volunteer effort, and we appreciate your time and attention and work on this particular initiative. We will have another webinar next Tuesday, July 24th, that has to do with monitoring, and we'll be having folks from GOON, Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, from the Ocean Foundation, and then 3 other member partners from the northeast of the United States, the northwest of North America, and New Zealand, talking about their monitoring networks and approaches to translating that information into action and advocacy. And then, of course, we are preparing for the Global Climate Action Summit, which is occurring in California this September. So you will be hearing more information about how the OA Alliance will be engaging in that opportunity, and we invite all of you to engage in that opportunity with us. So without further ado, I will go ahead and end the webinar, and thank you all for your participation this morning.